Zapraszamy pierwszy nasi prelegenci prosto z zagranicy. I think we're going to switch into English for sure because we have the privilege to have two keynote speakers at once. Hello, Jonathan. Hello, David.
Hello.
Hello.
I think everyone is looking for your presentation because everyone is wondering what's going to happen in the near future, and your topic going to consider issues concerning post-COVID era, and it's written from the consumer perspective and culture perspective. So I think it's really, really crucial to understand it better. So this virtual stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay. So first of all, thank you very much, everybody, for inviting us to be part of this session. We're very much looking forward to it. So thank you for the team at Impact Day, and also thank you very much to everybody for joining today. Really appreciate that. So what I'm going to do is do a little bit of introduction to what we're going to talk about and who I am. Then I'm going to hand over to David, who's going to talk about things from his point of view. Okay. So the session today, was just the introduction just said, is all about the future, post-COVID future from the consumer point of view. Now, obviously, COVID is going to change, or has changed, a wide range of things. What we're going to be particularly focusing on is the impact on people's lives from an emotional and kind of human point of view, in terms of how brands might need to engage with consumers differently on the basis of the kind of the emotional journey that people have gone through, having experienced COVID and lockdown and those experiences, and what that means about the emotional connections that brands might need to make. So just to introduce myself, my name's Jonathan Williams. I'm the founder of a new company called Discover.ai. We've been going for about 3 years, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do in a moment. I've been working with our strategy director, Sophie, who's unfortunately not here today, who's been working on a lot of our COVID work that we've been doing recently. So what you're going to hear today is part of a broader range of work that we've been doing. And then the other person who's on this call is David, who is from AB InBev, who was one of the people who sort of first kicked off and inspired the work that we're doing into COVID, and why we're sharing the kind of virtual stage here today. So I'll hand over to David to introduce himself and then talk through a bit of an introduction.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Cousino. I'm the Global Insight Director for our global brands at AB InBev, and I work across Budweiser, Stella Artois, Michelob Ultra, and Corona. And we commissioned some work with Discover.ai early on as the pandemic started to spread. And if we can go to the next slide. I just have a quote here. We like this quote by Rob Willer, who's a professor at Stanford University. When asked what it would take to beat the COVID-19 pandemic, and what he says is, in order to beat the pandemic, we need a more rapid change of behavior than I can think of in recent human history. And we as marketers and consumer insight professionals, we work really hard to evolve or even slightly change consumer behavior. We study consumers, we look for pain points of unmet needs, we launch innovations with enormous marketing campaigns and budgets. And then we design and execute research studies trying to find the slightest shift in behavior. But then, something like this pandemic happens, and in a matter of just 8 weeks, it has completely shifted our behavior patterns on a global scale. If you can just go to the next slide. And there's been so many changes in our lives. As a researcher looking into this, it was almost easier for me to track the things that haven't changed than looking at all of the things that have changed. And we can catalog all the obvious and immediate changes, from hygiene and safety to personal care. Something really important to my category, how we socialize, how we manage our finances, how we're redefining value, how we're force fielding our homes and ourselves when we go outside of our homes. But I think the real job to be done by the consumer insight professionals is to really understand what are the new behaviors that will stick around beyond COVID-19, and how will our earlier behavior patterns evolve coming out of the recovery. So that was our real challenge to Discover AI going forward. If we can go to the next slide. So, for this, we turned to data, and we collected the facts. And let me tell you, there's no lack of data out there. There's tons of it, and we've all been swimming in it. Everything from macro and microeconomic indicators, disease progression data, attitudes and behavior trends, and it sort of goes on and on. If anything, we may be suffering from data obesity. And what all of this is telling us is that the breadth, depth, and pace of change is shifting. But we still needed to know, what are the new behaviors and evolved behaviors that are going to remain with us post-COVID? We knew we needed to put some human understanding and some context behind all of the data that we were sitting on. We needed to create a more empathetic view of what was happening with people. But I also knew that, this was not the appropriate time to do any type of conventional qualitative research. And I didn't even have the confidence that people were really going to be able to articulate exactly what they were going through, because it was all still so raw at the time. So what I did is I turned to our agency partner, Discover.ai, who has helped us with other big issues that we are struggling with on a strategic level. And what I like about their approach, and Jonathan is going to take you through this, is that it taps into a higher level of human understanding that we needed to put all of that data that we were sitting on into that right context. So now I'm going to hand it off back over to Jonathan, who's going to take you through how Discover AI works and what they were able to do for us on this particular project.
Right, so Discover AI is all about getting insights and opportunity on a global scale fast. What we're about the deep dive, the digging into rich human and cultural insights, but doing that in a new way using online sources. So the approach we take is very human. So yes, we're driven by technology. We have an AI platform, but we use that technology not to try and use machines to find those qualitative answers, but actually to accelerate the human process of discovery. The second part of what we do is we're stretchy. We tap into rich and diverse online sources. And this is a very important point to make about how we do this research. I talk about qualitative research. We're not talking to consumers. We are going to online sources, the things that people write, the things that people say, the content that people share online, and digging into that to find the rich, inspiring insights to answer questions. And this is what gives us the flexibility to answer things quickly, cost effectively, and to find answers that you wouldn't be able to find by actually talking to consumers. This solution is also global, so we're able to find these online sources from around the world. We've done over 400 projects now in over 30 markets. and including over 60 languages. And it's agile, it's quick, and it's cost effective. So we can get to the kind of solutions you'd expect to get through traditional qualitative research or through expert interviews or through desk research, brand case studies, and a whole host of methodologies like semiotics and cultural analysis. We can get those same sorts of insights at a fraction of the time of cost. So I think David was the one who described it as kind of tracking, cultural insight and cultural immersion in real time. And that's what we're all about. We're about qualitative insight from online sources, getting that kind of deep richness, using technology, but using that technology to harness human expertise. And just to talk you through briefly the process of doing that, where we're combining that power of machine learning and human expertise. The first thing we do is we start off with a question. Quite often that question is posed as, what can we learn from the worlds of ... that can help us to ... So not a laundry list of exploratory questions, a single focused area of inquiry, which is framed by the world we want to dig into, where we want to get our insights from, and then also define for how we're going to use it and where we're going to get what we're going to do in terms of a brand and category because of that. So we define a single question. Then there's this point of expertise. Our strategists, who all have experience similar to mine in terms of working in strategy and insight agencies, will be using the technology and the online sources to answer the questions. People often ask us what percentage of it is the machine coming to the answer and what percentage of it is the person. For us, it's 100% the person and their expertise, but accelerated by that technology. The third key element of what we do is the sources, and the sources we choose to help answer the question. We don't just pipe in giant data sets. We don't just pipe in social media or claim to have thousands or millions of websites like is quite often the common approach. But to answer these strategic questions, we don't think that's the right approach. That's like trying to do qualitative research and saying we're going to ask everybody about everything. And try to use search terms to find the answer. So we choose specific sources that will stretch our thinking, get us into new places, and help us to answer the question. So for an example, we did a project where the question was, what does time mean to people, and how can we make it meaningful to give time back to people? To answer that question, we went to gap year blogs and people taking time out of college and work, bucket list blogs, retiree blogs, people transitioning from work to non-working lives, and even terminal illness blogs and people who were talking about the last few weeks and months of their lives. So an extreme example, but I think it demonstrates this idea of sampling sources to answer a question as a very core principle. And we will choose that sample based on the project. If it's a multi-country project, we will get a local language person to find the sources based on our brief, and then we'll bring centralize all the content to analyze it through our platform, our discovery platform, which is all about finding the nuggets, making the connections across countries and across sources, and to bring them together into what we call springboards, which is the 10 to 15 answers to the question that you've asked. So what we do is we fast track to those 10 or 15 nuggets that we think are core in answering the questions, the key themes, areas of insight, and areas of opportunities for the future. And all of this we do for what is, very quick and cost effective when you compare it to things like qualitative research. So a typical project is £6,000 plus £2,000 per market and done in 8 working days. I don't tell you this because it's about the heavy sell. It's just, I think it's a good principle just to demonstrate that we are talking about a genuinely agile methodology when compared to traditional research methodologies. As I say, we source our sources globally. We run global projects, and that's just an overview across the 350 to 400 projects we've completed, the kind of markets we've worked in, and the kind of languages we've covered. And we have done projects in Poland and Hungary, as well as all those other ones you see listed there. And we help answer a wide range of questions. So I'm going to talk about the COVID one in a moment, but just giving you a sort of a sample of the range of questions. The meaning of home, looking into naturals, multi-sensory connections, sustainability, targeting millennials, emergent cultural expressions. So in terms of activation for tomorrow, making an impact, there's a whole range and host of the kinds of questions that we can answer to help people with those sorts of questions. Just to give you a couple of Eastern European project examples before I go into the COVID project. We did a project for Asahi about Japanese modernity and what Japanese modernity means outside Japan, and that was run in Hungary and Poland. And we did a project on opportunities in non-alcoholic drinks and what the cultural codes of those are in Russia and Poland. So just to give you another idea of the kind of project questions we answer and specific ones we've done in your region. So getting on to the subject of COVID and post-COVID world, just to say this, what I'm sharing was part of a sort of a program of research. We did an initial report which was all about human stories, and it was the initial reaction. We ran it over the first weekend of lockdown in the UK and got it out there in terms of the real human stories. We then did the longer focus project, which I'm sharing with you today, which is the new normal. And then we've now also been doing very topic-specific inquiries about things like entertainment, the home, and other issues around COVID, either as other thought pieces, but also projects for specific clients as well. And now moving on to this question of the new normal. As I said, what we wanted to get an idea of is what will the long-term impact of this be on people, their emotions, their mental state, and what it means to connect with them and their lives. And obviously that's a very difficult question to answer. When we did this project, even now we're probably at the start of the journey that people are going through, but when we ran this project, we were just literally 4 or 5 weeks in. You can't talk to people, talk to consumers, and get them to tell you what life is going to be like in 6 months or a year's time, or what impact some of these changes are going to have on them. So what we did is something we do in a lot of our projects, which is to look at parallel worlds. Where else have people been experiencing moments of isolation or loneliness and separation that you can be similar to what you might experience in lockdown and the impacts of social distancing? People will have experienced those other experiences over the weeks, months, and years and been recording their experiences. How can we look at insights for how people experience those things in their lives and draw parallels for COVID? So our sources were divorce, imprisonment, losing a life partner, illness, mental health issues, isolating jobs, retirement, aging, and loneliness, and all kinds of different areas. Obviously very sad areas, and it was sometimes difficult to read some of these stories. They were things that people were sharing online with the rest of the world. They were very human stories, and some of them were about trauma and loss, but many of them were about coping and resilience and renewal. And that's what made it so interesting and informative, how brands might help connect with people in the future. Okay, so we ran this project and we found 4 kind of core themes or topics that kind of really shone through this approach. So we found, I think it was 14 springboards, as we call them in total, but they grouped into these 4 areas. One was about being stronger in yourself, about by going through these difficult life experiences, people have a stronger well of strength and resourcefulness to draw on. Second one is about redefining who you are. People make discoveries about themselves when they're put through something new and different and difficult. And that shapes their understanding of who they are and how they live their life and how they want to live their life for the future. The third is forging empowering social bonds. And obviously social bonds are important anyway, but what became clear in the analysis is there's a greater reliance on people's relationships, but also a greater understanding of the role that other people or even organizations and brands play in their lives. Who is helping them, who is supporting them, who is not, who is meaningful in their connections and those bonds. And the last one was about finding more meaning in experiences. And often it's the small experiences, actually. As you're going through something tough, those small experiences are playing an important role in keeping you emotionally engaged in your day-to-day and getting through tough times. So what I'm going to do now is just talk you through some of the deliverables that shape this result so you can see what you get from a Discover.ai project and the kind of materials David was working with. I won't go into them in a lot of detail for the benefit of time. But each one of these areas you can see in front of you now is a springboard, an area of insight we found under the theme of being stronger in yourself. So the principle of being stronger in yourself breaks down into 4 key concepts: about learning to navigate big changes and what that journey is like, about dealing with personal pressure and what you find in terms of your own strength because of the things that you're dealing with, the idea of resilience and positivity in the mental journey you go through, the idea of avoiding health and well-being traps and what it does to behavior and what that does for your kind of lifestyle, and finally drawing on strength from memories. Those were the kind of 5 areas. and we'll have brought each of those areas to life with our kind of core deliverables. So when we do a project, you get two key outputs for each springboard. One of these is what we call a quotes page, and it's where we bring to life the springboard with a number of quotes. So we will have read a lot of content. We'll have immersed ourselves in the content. We'll have been finding kind of qualitative insights all the way through. But when we're doing this, we pick out the top 10 that we think best bring to life the area, like learning to navigate big changes, but also push it in slightly different directions, add new and interesting kind of language or perspectives on that particular area. And by combining 14 springboards, each with 10 quotes chosen to give stretch and inspiration, it becomes a very rich source of deliverables. So, for instance, learning to navigate life changes can be about kind of brutal changes in lifestyle, or the fact that you have to face new facts and new life realities every morning, or the idea that that you're on a journey to the world beginning to feel normal after a trauma, and so forth. So there's little concepts within each of these key springboards or areas. Now, normally when we do a project, you get this quotes page, but you also get what we call a landing page, which is where we go into the detail of the key learnings and findings, what it means for you and your brand and your category. We don't have this for this project because we were just giving a top line, but just a kind of overall summary of what we learned from this for being strong in yourself is just that post-COVID people will be more self-reliant, creative and resourceful in their own lives. Therefore, they're relying less for governments, companies, brands to point the way on what right looks like, to give them the signposts in their lives. So the challenge to brands really is, how are you taking a more proactive role in supporting people in their own strength rather than being a beacon that they will follow in your particular category? How can you actually be a partner to them to support their strength rather than a way of actually sort of just as I said, signposting or expecting them to follow you? So the next one is redefining who you are. And again, 5 areas here. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each one because the principle is the same. So within each of these, there's 5 different aspects of redefining who you are. Finding freedom in time alone, revisiting the past to shape the future, finding out who you really are, the depth of understanding of who you are, seeing hard times as a way to evolve, and seeking a simpler way to live life. Each one's a slightly different theme. So finding the freedom in time alone is all about having times of separation actually gives you time to reflect and do and think things you might not normally do and rethink things, versus the simpler lives that people are living. We're not expecting people to stick to everything that's simpler in their lives, but they might hang on to small aspects of life or ways of thinking that are simpler. That there might be aspects of complexity that they don't re-embrace following their experiences. So just some examples of redefining who you are. And again, each of those 5 areas would have had a springboard. Each would have had these 10 quotes. Here you can see the examples of seeing hard times as a way to evolve. You can see various examples of that here, whether it's kind of encouraging you to use your brain, being the person you've always wanted to be, or the idea of tough chapters play a positive role in your life. Each of those are different facets of that particular thought. Could you go? Oh, sorry. Yes. So yes. So again, we have. Sorry if you go backwards. Yes. Again, the same summary here. So here we're talking about people having a stronger sense of self-identity, being less defined by what they consume, impacted by brands, how they should build relationships with them. So this idea that your sense of identity has changed and become stronger as part of the experience. So you're more stronger and resourceful, but your self-identity is more defined by your experiences and has changed as part of this process. So again, forging empowering social bonds is things like social stigmas, finding a place in a busy world, rediscovering what your place is once you emerge from lockdown, sharing time and stories together, finding meaning in life through love, getting support from other people. These are all forms of understanding how our social bonds become more important and more powerful, and understanding the role of those bonds in people's lives are important. And again, we have the quotes that bring this to life, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to dwell on these, but you can see that there are a number of different aspects to finding meaning in life through love. And if you could move on. So here, the new normal post-COVID, people may be evaluating everyone around them, including brands, in the context of these new social connections and the ability to provide support and love to others. A much sort of more stringent criteria for understanding who is supporting them, who's part of their community and who isn't. And finally, finding more meaning in experiences. Again, we've got four areas. We've got overcoming silence in an activity where actually these experiences take us away from the quiet and from the solitude. Small and precious moments, filling life with fun and experience, or even finding activities that give us a release, that actually take the strange and stresses and emotions that build up around these difficult times and actually give us a chance to create release around them. And again, we have a quotes page bringing all these to life. So here's just one example around cherishing small and precious moments, where that's living precious moments together, small moments of connection, helping in isolation, or building funny moments into your day, for example. And the new normal here is about people not just valuing experiences above objects, which we know is something that we've been talking about for a long time, but valuing the experiences that brands can give them based on the meaning that they bring to their lives. So not only how are these experiences connecting, but how are they meaningful? How are they adding to the overall experiences that add meaning to people's lives in a post-COVID context? Now, obviously, there's a lot of richness there underneath that I haven't been able to present. Normally, we present those results in an hour to an hour and a half rather than in sort of 15 minutes within a 25-minute presentation. So hopefully what I've done is give you a bit of a flavor of what we do and what the deliverables look like and how we can tailor those for any particular question. So we always deliver springboards, but those springboards change on the basis of the question and the context. And just leave you with 4 questions in this area. So for being stronger in yourself, how are we supporting people's innate resourcefulness and creativity? If that's being driven by this experience, what are we doing to support that in people's lives? About redefining who you are. People are evolving, their understanding themselves evolving. How is our understanding of ourselves evolving as a brand? And how is that in tune with our changing consumers? We need to understand how consumers are changing and also how we are changing as brands and how the two dovetail together. Are we doing that? About empowering social bonds. What valued role do we play in people's community of support? Do we know we're there? Are we there meaningfully? And finally, do the experience, in meaningful experiences, do the experience we create bring meaning in people's lives? They can be small, they can be incidental, they can be little moments of fun. But what's the nugget of insight that suggests that it's actually relevant to our brand, relevant to our consumer, and bringing a little bit of meaningfulness into people's lives? So these are just 4 broad thoughts. Typically what we would then do is then dig deeper into the specifics of your category and your brand to make these more relevant to you. So we've had to keep these very broad and general, but they're very much the start point for finding out what it means for brands, not the end point. But hopefully you find that useful. Now I'm going to hand over to David now, who's just going to sort of finish by talking about what this meant for them at AB InBev.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jonathan. So this approach was really helpful for us to build that more holistic view of our consumers by linking all of our quantitative data with a more empathetic understanding. It was really fast and it's remarkably deep. And as Jonathan mentioned, we've worked with Discover.ai on this approach before, and as Jonathan said, what I really like about it is it's like being able to listen in on culture in real time as it's happening. And that is incredibly important, especially in a situation like this where everything is changing and evolving and shifting very quickly.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you very much again for everybody at Impact Day, and thank you for everybody watching, and I hope you found it interesting. If you've got any questions, or if there is an ability to have questions, we'd be happy to answer questions. But otherwise, please do get in touch with me, or get in touch with Sophie, or get in touch with David. And we'd happy to follow up with you and tell you more about what we're doing another time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you guys very much for the presentation and for these insights. I'm really proud that we were able to do that, because we have a connections. Maybe the audience doesn't see that, but we are linking between the US and the UK at the same time. So I'm really happy that we did that. Thank you so much for all the insights. I think they were really interesting. I have one especially in mind, because you were talking about the cherish moments and the importance of this happiness that we can somehow deal in this difficult times. Łukasz, I think you have some experience with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I really liked your presentation, especially the part called being stronger in yourself. Because I think that building resilience and positivity is one of the key to success, and especially sport and a healthy way of living. So that's why I practice this way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.